Coffee Break. Thoughtful conversations for a busy world. Let's begin.
Right now, your brain is likely burning up valuable glucose, spiking your cortisol levels, and just generally preparing your physical body for a catastrophic disaster.
A disaster that statistically has a 99% chance of never actually happening.
Exactly. You are sweating on this mental treadmill, burning all this energy, but you aren't moving a single inch forward. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah, we are looking at a really fascinating aspect of human psychology today, one that affects pretty much everyone.
Oh, especially you listening right now. If you have an active, curious mind, this is for you. And today's source material is actually highly unusual for us.
It really is. We aren't synthesizing like a giant stack of academic papers today.
Right. No 500-page historical biographies this time.
Yeah.
Instead, we are looking at a single, incredibly potent excerpt from a text. It's titled, The Architecture of Anticipatory Anxiety.
And this is a deliberate shift in our usual format. We're taking a microscope to microtest, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because the density of the single sentence we're going to talk about is just staggering.
The mission of this deep dive is to really unpack this one profound statement because it completely dismantles the way we justify our own rumination.
It really does. Understanding the mechanics behind this one sentence has the power to entirely reframe how you experience your own mental loops.
So we should probably just put the hook front and center, right?
Yeah, let's do it. The core quote from our source material is this, and listen closely. Overthinking is just anxiety rehearsing for a disaster.
Wow.
I want to say it one more time, actually, just so the absolute weight of it sinks in. Overthinking is just anxiety rehearsing for a disaster.
That sentence, I mean, it just strips away all the sophisticated intellectual defenses we build up.
Right, all those habits we have.
Yeah, it refuses to let us hide behind this guise of being, quote unquote, prepared.
And I want to speak directly to you listening right now, because I know the profile of the person who tunes into these deep dives. You are the learner.
Naturally curious.
Exactly. You love gathering information, connecting the dots, exploring multiple perspectives. You like doing your homework on life.
Which is a great trait.
It is. But when you have that kind of active, hungry intellect, it is incredibly easy to fall into the trap of ruminating.
Oh, absolutely. Because you use your brain as your primary tool to navigate the world.
Right. So because of that, ruminating often feels like productive problem solving. It feels like you are just analyzing the variables.
Yeah, like you're plotting the trajectories, mapping the terrain.
Exactly. You think you're being responsible. But according to the source material we are dissecting today, what you are actually doing is not preparation. It's an illusion.
And to dismantle that illusion, we have to move beyond just the metaphors and look at the actual mechanics of what is happening in your head.
So during this deep dive, we're going to break down the precise semantics of this excerpt.
Right. We'll explore the structure of what the text calls anticipatory anxiety.
And we're going to expose the biological reality of this mental theater we trap ourselves in.
And most importantly, we want to give you the practical, step-by-step tools to break that loop.
Because we have to understand not just what the brain is doing, but why the evolutionary biology of your brain drives it to do this in the first place.
Exactly. How this mechanism operates on a deeply structural level.
Okay, so let's unpack this from the very beginning. Let's start with the framing provided by the title of our source text. The Architecture of Anticipatory Anxiety.
We really have to ground ourselves there before we even get to the quote itself.
Yeah, those two words, architecture and anticipatory, they set the entire stage. Because, well, when I hear the word architecture, I think of something deliberate.
Yeah.
Like a building doesn't just happen by accident.
The deliberate nature of that word is crucial. Let's think about what architecture actually requires. It implies something constructed, designed, and, built with intention.
Piece by piece, over time.
Exactly. Framing anxiety this way completely changes the paradigm because anxiety is typically viewed as a passive weather event, right?
Right, like a storm. People describe it as the dark cloud that just floats into their mind.
Yeah, it obscures the sun for a while and then hopefully eventually it just blows away. But the text completely rejects that passive model.
Okay, so if it's not a weather event happening to us, the text is arguing that anxiety is a structure our minds are actively building.
That's the argument, yeah.
But let me challenge that premise immediately.
Yeah.
Because if I am the one building it, why does it feel so involuntary?
That's a very fair question.
Because I don't wake up in the morning and consciously decide, hey, I think I'll build a massive, terrifying skyscraper of dread today. It feels like it hijacks me.
Right. And that is the insidious nature of neural pathways, which is basically the biological equivalent of this architecture we're talking about.
Okay, neural pathways.
Yeah. When we talk about building this structure, we have to look at neuroplasticity. The brain operates on a principle often summarized as neurons that fire together, wire together.
Right, I've heard that.
So every time you engage in a worry, you are laying down a neural pathway. The first time you worry about a specific outcome, it's like walking through tall grass.
It's difficult. The path isn't clear.
Exactly. But if you walk that same path every single day, if you repeatedly worry about that same outcome, you trample the grass into a dirt path.
And then you pave it into a road.
And eventually it becomes a multi-lane neural highway.
Wow. So the architecture is the neural scaffolding we've created through repetition. We've basically automated the construction process.
You've hit the nail on the head. The brain favors efficiency, always. It will automate any thought process that you repeat frequently.
So while it feels involuntary in the present moment, that automatic dread is actually the result of thousands of micro-decisions in the past.
Yes. Decisions to engage with a worry. You provided the blueprints, which are your past experiences and your fears.
And I provided the materials, like the details of my current situation.
Right. And your brain, acting as this overly diligent contractor, simply followed your instructions to erect the building.
That is terrifying, honestly. And furthermore, the title calls this architecture anticipatory.
Yes, which is a key distinction.
Meaning the entire structure is being built on the unstable ground of a future that hasn't even happened yet.
Exactly. It's entirely future-oriented.
You are laying a concrete foundation in a hypothetical dimension.
Right. Anticipatory anxiety requires you to experience the physiological and psychological weight of an event that currently exists nowhere except within the confines of your own skull.
Wow. You are building a fortress to protect against an invading army that hasn't even been recruited yet, in a country that doesn't even exist.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, I want to translate this into a functional analogy, actually, because that helps me visualize the mechanism a bit better.
Go for it.
If anxiety is an architecture, then our passing daily worries are just loose bricks.
Okay, I like this.
Right. Like a single worry by itself, say, what if my boss didn't like that email? It's just a brick lying on the ground.
Right. It's small. You can step over it.
Exactly. You can kick it out of the way. But overthinking is the mortar.
Ah, the mortar.
Yeah. When you start overthinking, you take that loose brick, you apply the mortar of rumination, and you stick it to another brick.
Like, what if she didn't like the email? What if she thinks I'm incompetent?
Yes. And what if I get passed over for the promotion? You are actively building a wall. We think we are building a shelter to protect ourselves from the storm of the future, but we're actually building a labyrinth that we get completely lost in.
The mortar analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of fixation. I really like that.
Thanks.
Because the mortar of overthinking is what solidifies a fleeting, harmless worry into a permanent, rigid structure of anxiety.
Right, because without the overthinking, the worry eventually just dissolves or passes.
Exactly. But with the overthinking, it becomes a structural impediment.
Which brings us to the obvious question, I think. If this architecture is so confining, so exhausting to maintain, and ultimately traps us, why do we do it?
Right. What compels the brain to do this?
Yeah. What compels the human brain to become a compulsive builder in the first place? Why do we keep applying the mortar?
It really comes down to the brain's fundamental intolerance for uncertainty.
Intolerance for uncertainty.
Yes. The future is an absolute void. It is fundamentally uncontrollable and unknowable.
Which is scary.
Very scary. To the primitive parts of the human brain, uncertainty is not just uncomfortable. It is perceived as a direct, mortal threat to survival.
A mortal threat. Wow.
The brain operates as a predictive prediction machine. It constantly attempts to map out every possible scenario to ensure it won't be caught off guard.
So it's trying to turn the unknown future into a known past before it even arrives.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, actually. Yes.
It wants the security of hindsight, but in advance.
Exactly. It is an attempt to pre-experience the future, to eliminate the variable of surprise. The brain assumes that if it can imagine every single way a situation could go wrong, it can preemptively defend against those outcomes.
Okay, let's use a modern technology metaphor for this, because I think we can all relate to this.
Sure.
Overthinking is like having 50 tabs open in your brain's internet browser.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single tab is autoplaying a different high-definition video of a potential disaster.
And your brain's RAM is completely maxed out?
Yes. The fan is spinning loudly, the battery is draining rapidly, and the whole system is just sluggish. You feel incredibly busy, right? The machine is working at maximum capacity.
But you haven't actually typed a single word into the search bar.
Right. You haven't written a single line of code.
Yeah.
You are burning massive amounts of energy processing background noise.
That software analogy highlights the cognitive load perfectly. You are depleting your executive function.
And the executive function is the part of your brain responsible for actual decision-making, right?
Exactly. You're depleting it by running these resource-heavy background simulations of disaster.
And that brings us directly to the core act described in the source text.
Right, the quote itself.
If we understand that anticipatory anxiety is a structure we build, and that overthinking is the mortar we use to build it, we really have to look closely at the first half of our core quote.
Overthinking is just anxiety.
Yes. Let's really pause on that word just. Overthinking is just anxiety. That is an aggressive, definitive statement.
The word just is the most powerful word in that half of the sentence, without a doubt.
It really is.
Because it is an exclusionary word. It strips away all other possibilities. The text is aggressively demanding that we contrast the concept of true, effective problem solving with the phenomenon of overthinking.
Okay, let's break down that contrast then.
Right.
Because on the surface, to the person experiencing it, they feel exactly the same.
They do.
Right. When I am actively solving a complex problem, my brow is furrowed, I'm focused, I'm running scenarios.
Yeah.
But when I am overthinking, my brow is also furrowed, I'm also focused, and I'm also running scenarios. So how do we differentiate the two?
The difference lies in the trajectory of the thought process. True problem solving is a linear convergent process.
Convergent. Okay, so it has a definitive endpoint.
Yes, let's look at the mechanics of it. Convergent thinking involves identifying a specific, tangible issue, brainstorming potential solutions, evaluating the data, selecting the most viable option, and then, and this is the absolute crux of it, executing an action.
It is actionable. It moves you from point A to point B in physical reality.
Exactly. It is dynamic. You encounter a math problem, you apply a formula, you calculate the answer, and then you close the textbook.
The thought process terminates in a result.
Yes. Overthinking, on the other hand, is divergent and circular.
Divergent, meaning it spreads out.
Right. It does not converge on a solution. It spirals outward, generating an ever-expanding web of new hypothetical problems.
Okay, so by stating that overthinking is just anxiety, the source completely annihilates the illusion that rumination serves a productive purpose.
It completely destroys it. Overthinking is anxiety wearing a mask of productivity.
It's putting on a suit, carrying a briefcase, and marching confidently into the office of your brain to do absolutely nothing of value.
That's exactly what it's doing.
But, okay, let me represent the skeptical listener for a moment here. Let's push back on this a bit.
Please do.
For someone who loves learning and being prepared, someone who tunes in to deep dives to be informed, isn't thinking things through thoroughly a literal survival trait?
It is.
Right. Human beings didn't survive and climb to the top of the food chain by just hoping for the best and walking blindly into the jungle.
No, we didn't.
We survive by anticipating the winter, anticipating the migration patterns of predators, and thinking through complex social dynamics.
True.
If I don't worry about my finances, I will be vulnerable. If I don't anticipate problems at work, I will fail.
Right?
So how do we differentiate between necessary, vigilant preparation and the toxic architecture of anxiety? Because from where I sit, that line seems dangerously thin.
That tension is the central paradox of human cognition. It really is. You are entirely correct that anticipation, planning, and simulation are profound evolutionary advantages. These are executive functions located primarily in the prefrontal cortex, which is the most advanced part of our brain. They are responsible for agriculture, engineering, and human civilization itself.
Right, like we wouldn't have built suspension bridges if someone hadn't worried about the wind tearing them down.
Precisely. The issue is not the capacity to anticipate. The issue is the evolutionary mismatch between the environment our brains evolved in and the environment we currently inhabit.
Evolutionary mismatch. Okay, let's dig into that.
Our threat detection systems evolved to deal with immediate, acute physical threats. A saber-toothed tiger in the brush, a hostile neighboring tribe.
Things that are right in front of you.
Exactly. You notice the threat, your body mobilizes energy, you fight or you run, the threat is resolved, and your nervous system returns to baseline. The loop closes quickly.
But the threats we face today are rarely saber-toothed tigers. They're abstract, chronic, and long-term.
Yes.
Like a mortgage payment spanning 30 years, a vague performance review, the global economy.
And that is where the mutation occurs. Our brain applies a short-term, acute biological response to long-term, abstract problems.
Wow.
The line between healthy preparation and overthinking is crossed when the thinking ceases to be an open, generative process and becomes a closed, repetitive loop.
Closed loop.
It is the fundamental difference between analyzing a source for knowledge, which expands your understanding and leads to new actions, and endlessly spinning your wheels without generating any new data.
So the defining metric is the yield. Are you generating new information or just recycling the old?
Exactly. Let's use a highly relatable, practical scenario to map this out.
Yes, please. Concrete examples help so much.
Imagine you have a critical, high-stakes presentation with the executive board of your company tomorrow.
Okay. Stressful.
Very. Now, healthy, productive preparation, which is that convergent problem solving we talked about, involves reviewing your slides, anticipating 3 or 4 of the most likely questions the board might ask based on your knowledge of their priorities, and formulating clear answers.
Right. That has a definitive endpoint. You gather the data, you map the immediate terrain, you build the bridge.
Exactly. Overthinking is what happens at 2:00 a.m. the night before the presentation.
Oh, I've been there.
We all have. You have already reviewed the notes, you already know the answers, but you continue to run the scenario, only now the scenarios are no longer grounded in probable reality.
Right. You start worrying about your tone of voice.
Yes. You start worrying about what happens if the projector spontaneously combusts.
Oh, well.
You start worrying about a board member laughing at you, which leads to you being fired, which leads to you being unable to pay your mortgage.
Which leads to your family leaving you.
Exactly, which leads to you living in a cardboard box under an overpass.
The slide deck on quarterly earnings just escalated into total existential ruin.
But that is the exact trajectory of a divergent, closed loop. The mind takes a functional preparation for a standard corporate meeting and spirals it into a life-or-death survival scenario.
It's wild when you say it out loud like that.
It is. Because you are no longer generating new actionable solutions for the meeting.
Right.
You are just recycling fear-based variables. The overthinking is no longer serving the outcome of the presentation. It is only serving to sustain the anxiety itself.
That distinction is a massive paradigm shift. I really want the listener to internalize this. Are you generating new insights? Or are you just repeatedly touching the same hot stove to see if it still burns?
That's exactly it.
And I think what makes it so incredibly difficult to break out of that closed loop is the biological reinforcement we get.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when we are, quote unquote, working on a problem in our heads, even if we are just spinning in circles, our brain tricks us. It feeds us little hits of dopamine or adrenaline.
It makes the worry feel urgent and necessary.
Right. It creates a powerful false sense of security.
It really does. The brain operates under a flawed subconscious logic. It assumes that as long as it is actively engaged in the act of worrying, it is on guard. It equates the physical feeling of anxiety with the feeling of safety. The deeply ingrained primitive belief is, if I stop worrying about this potential disaster, I will let my guard down and I will be vulnerable. Therefore, I must continue to overthink to stay safe.
Which is a tragic paradox.
Yeah.
You are actively destroying your peace of mind and your physical health in the present moment in a misguided attempt to protect your peace of mind in a hypothetical future that hasn't even arrived.
It's exhausting. And to truly understand why this closed loop is so draining, both physically and emotionally, we have to look at what the anxiety is actually doing with all that overthinking.
Okay, let's do that.
We've established that it's building an architecture. We've established that overthinking is a disguised loop. But what is actually happening inside that architecture? What is the event taking place?
This leads us directly to the most striking imagery in the source text, I think, and the biological reality of what this does to the human body.
Yes.
Let's unpack the second half of the quote. Rehearsing for a disaster.
This is the emotional and physiological core of the excerpt. Let's focus intently on the word rehearsing.
Rehearsing. Okay.
In the real world, what is a rehearsal? It implies practice. It implies repetition.
Right.
It implies a deliberate, structured preparation for a future performance. You rehearse a play so that when opening night comes, your body and mind know exactly what to do. It is designed to create muscle memory.
You memorize the lines, you hit the marks, you know your cues, you do it over and over until it is second nature.
Exactly. Now, the profound tragedy, according to the text, is that the event we are practicing for is a disaster.
A disaster.
The brain is burning immense cognitive calories to memorize lines, block out scenes, and perfect the emotional delivery for a catastrophic play that hasn't even opened and likely never will.
It is the ultimate mental theater. You are acting as the director, designing the lighting and setting this bleak scene. You're the lead actor, feeling all the devastating emotions. And you are the captive audience, forced to watch this tragedy unfold from the front row.
It's a horrible show to be stuck at.
It really is. And the script is always, without fail, a worst-case scenario.
Yeah.
You're forcing yourself to live through the actual visceral, emotional toll of a catastrophe that currently only exists in your imagination.
Yes.
But earlier, you mentioned this isn't just a philosophical concept. You said it is a biological reality.
Yeah.
How does that mental theater translate to the physical body?
This is where we have to look at the neuroscience of imagination and the threat response.
Okay.
The human brain, particularly the neocortex, is incredibly advanced at simulating realities. However, the brain's threat detection center, primarily the amygdala, is quite primitive.
The amygdala.
Right, it is designed to act fast, not to think deeply. The critical flaw in the system is that the amygdala often cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined threat and a physical, present-moment threat occurring in the real world.
Wait, really? So if I vividly imagine getting fired and losing my home, my brain processes that with the exact same alarm bells as if a bear just walked into my living room.
Biologically, yes, the mechanism is identical.
That is insane.
When you are sitting on your couch, perfectly safe in your living room, but you are in your mental theater rehearsing a disaster, your amygdala sounds the alarm.
It thinks it's happening right now.
Exactly. It perceives the vivid imagery of your overthinking as an active, unfolding crisis. It immediately activates the HPA axis.
The HPA axis, what is that?
That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is your body's central stress response system.
Okay, so this is what triggers the fight or flight response.
Exactly. The hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland, which signals the adrenal glands to flood your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline.
Oh, wow.
Your heart rate increases to pump blood to your muscles. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid to take in more oxygen. Your digestion shuts down because digesting food is not a priority when you're fighting for your life.
Right, you don't need to digest a sandwich if you're running from a bear.
Exactly. Your pupils dilate. Everything mobilizes.
And all of this massive physiological mobilization is happening while I'm just sitting on the couch staring blankly at the wall.
Yeah.
I am physically paying the price for an event that hasn't happened. I am basically wearing out my biological engine.
You are enduring the trauma of the disaster in advance. The cortisol is eroding your immune system, disrupting your sleep, and impairing your cognitive function.
Just from thinking.
Just from rehearsing. And because it is a rehearsal, you don't just endure this trauma once. A rehearsal is about repetition.
Right.
You run the scene, flood your body with cortisol, and then you run it again. You endure it dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. You practice the pain. You perfect the suffering.
You perfect the suffering. That is a heavy, sobering realization.
It is.
But it perfectly ties back to the concept of the architecture. The mental theater is the building we constructed. The rehearsal is the event happening inside it.
Exactly.
We built the walls with our passing worries. We sealed them with a mortar of divergent overthinking. And now we are locked inside the auditorium, repeatedly running the worst play ever written and flooding our bodies with stress hormones in the process.
It is a phenomenal holistic synthesis of the two concepts. The architecture provides the venue, and the anxiety provides the script.
Wow.
But I want to make sure we don't leave the listener trapped in this theater.
Yeah.
Because there is a deeply empowering flip side to recognizing this mechanism.
Okay, good. Because I was getting a little stressed myself.
By understanding that this is a constructed theater, a rehearsed play, and a biological misfire of the amygdala, you gain agency. You can start to step outside of the theater.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? Because I know someone listening right now is thinking, okay, I see the theater, I understand the cortisol loop, I know I'm in it, but the doors feel locked.
Right.
The play just keeps auto-playing in my head. I can't just tell my brain to stop worrying.
You are right. You cannot forcefully suppress a thought. Trying to not think about a disaster is like trying not to think about a pink elephant.
The minute you say it, it's there.
Exactly. The human brain will always generate what-if scenarios. That is its default setting for survival, and you can't uninstall that software.
So the thoughts will appear. The script will be handed to you.
Yes. But you can refuse to read the lines.
Yeah.
You can refuse to attend the rehearsal.
Refusing to attend the rehearsal. Let's make this highly practical. What does that actually look like in real time?
Okay.
If I'm the learner listening to this, and tomorrow I catch myself spiraling about a work project, what is the exact mechanism I use to stop the rehearsal?
It requires a psychological technique known as cognitive uncoupling or cognitive diffusion.
Cognitive uncoupling.
Yes. When you are caught in the loop, your identity is fused with the anxiety. You are the actor in the play. Uncoupling is the process of creating distance between your observing self and the thought itself.
Yeah.
The first and most critical step is labeling.
Labeling, like calling it out by name.
Yes. When you catch yourself running the lines for a disaster scenario, you have to consciously, explicitly label the action. You say to yourself silently or even out loud, I am not solving a problem right now. I am rehearsing for a disaster.
I am rehearsing for disaster. What does that specific label do neurologically? Why is that better than just saying, hey, stop worrying?
Because when you tell yourself to stop worrying, you are fighting the amygdala. And the amygdala usually wins those fights because it controls the adrenaline.
Oh, that makes sense.
But when you apply a descriptive analytical label, I am rehearsing for a disaster, you are forcing your brain to shift electrical activity and blood flow away from the emotional center of the amygdala and into the logical observing center of the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, really? Just by labeling it?
Yes, you are activating the executive function to observe the emotion rather than be consumed by it.
So you step out of the spotlight on the stage where the emotion is happening and you walk up to the projection booth or like the back row of the theater. You are observing the play instead of starring in it.
That shift in perspective is everything. You acknowledge the script is there, but you strip it of its urgency. You tell your brain, I see the script for the I get fired and lose everything play. It's a very dramatic script. My amygdala wrote a great thriller. But we're not putting that on stage today. We're not allocating biological resources to this.
And then what?
And then you must redirect your attention to a convergent, present moment task.
You force the brain to do actual math rather than hypothetical math.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I want to walk through a quick exercise with you. Think about your current biggest worry.
The thing that has been taking up the most real estate in your mind over the last week.
Yeah, the thing that wakes you up at 3:00 a.m.
Wow.
Visualize it right now. Now, apply the filter of the source text we just dissected.
Look at the mental labor you are dedicating to this worry.
Are you actually taking tangible, linear steps to solve it? Are you engaging in true convergent problem solving that has an actionable endpoint? Are you gathering materials to build a bridge? Or are you just pacing the stage, running lines for the disaster scene?
It is a confronting question, but it is the ultimate diagnostic tool. Are you building a bridge, or are you just adding another wing to your architecture of anxiety?
If you realize you are just running lines, if you realize you are just applying mortar to the same loose bricks, it is time to exit the theater.
Yes.
You don't have to solve the unsolvable future. You cannot control the void. You just have to stop practicing the catastrophe.
That transition from unconscious actor blindly following the script to conscious observer recognizing the mental theater is where the grip of overthinking is permanently broken. The anxiety loses its power when it is exposed. When it is no longer viewed as a necessary protective preparation, but as an exhausting fictional rehearsal that is actively damaging your biology, the illusion shatters.
This has been an incredibly illuminating journey. We've taken a very brief single-sentence piece of source material and completely dismantled it to see the psychological and biological gears working inside.
It's been a great deep dive.
We started by exploring the intentional architecture of anticipatory anxiety, understanding that it's something we actively construct through neuroplasticity and repetition, not just a passive weather event that happens to us.
We then exposed overthinking for what it truly is, a divergent closed loop.
Right.
We stripped away the illusion that spinning our wheels is somehow a productive form of problem solving, and we explored the evolutionary mismatch that causes our brains to treat abstract, future problems like immediate physical threats.
And finally, we revealed the exhausting mental theater of rehearsing for a disaster. We broke down the biological toll, the amygdala hijack, the cortisol floods of practicing for catastrophes that only exist in our imagination.
And we laid out the mechanism of cognitive uncoupling to help you step out of the theater.
The brevity of the source text, just a title and a single sentence, is deceptive. It is a dense, elegant diagnostic tool for our deepest mental habits.
It really is.
And that is the ultimate relevance to you, the listener. By simply understanding and internalizing the mechanics behind this single sentence, you now have a highly effective tool to break your own cognitive loops.
Yes, you do.
The next time you catch yourself ruminating, the next time you feel the heavy mortar of overthinking starting to set, you can pause. You can step back from the construction site, engage your prefrontal cortex, and ask yourself that one clarifying question.
Am I actually problem solving right now, or am I just rehearsing for a disaster?
Labeling the rehearsal disrupts the architecture. It introduces a massive structural crack in the foundation of the anxiety.
It really does.
Before we wrap up, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, something to explore on your own that builds on what we've unpacked today.
Okay.
We spent this entire deep dive talking about the negative application of this cognitive power. We've talked about the labyrinth, the worst-case scenarios, the catastrophic plays, and the biological drain of anticipatory anxiety. But I want you to step back and think about the sheer mental horsepower required to do that.
It is immense. The creativity, the narrative structure, the focus, and the minute attention to detail required to construct a believable, immersive disaster scenario is staggering.
It really is.
Your brain is a master storyteller and a master builder.
So if your brain possesses the immense creative power, the intense focus, and the architectural skill required to write, direct, and repeatedly rehearse a complex, highly detailed fictional disaster, what incredible things could you build if you consciously redirected that exact same architectural power?
That's a great question.
What if you used that immense cognitive machinery to rehearse for success, to build detailed blueprints for innovation, or to construct narratives of resilience?
The machinery is entirely neutral. The architecture of anxiety and the architecture of genius use the exact same bricks. It is simply a matter of which blueprint you choose to follow.
Think about that the next time you realize you've been building skyscrapers of dread out of thin air. You are a master builder. Your brain is an engine of incredible power. You just have to consciously choose what you want to construct.
Well said.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We will see you next time.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Coffee Break. If this conversation stayed with you, you can find more episodes here on the channel. Until next time, take